incredibly inhumane. And bluntly, the president thought he could separate kids from their parents and the American public wouldn't care. That's the only reason he did it. He thought that they wouldn't care. But the president realized that America has a moral gag reflex and we are revolted by his decision. Absolutely revolted by it. I am very used to getting calls in my office from people, nearly 1,000 people a day reach out by phone or email or letter, and the calls for 6 years have tended to be, Senator Kaine, do this, don't do that, why'd you do that? This is the first issue where many of the calls are, Senator Kaine, what can I do? Can I be a foster parent? Can I donate to legal representation for children? Can I send clothes to the border? Last Thursday, I found some of these children in Virginia. Not because the HHS told me where they were, but we heard that some of the children were in Bristow, which is in Prince William County. There's no federal facility there. I realized there is a youth-serving organization, sort of a newer version of an orphanage called Youth for Tomorrow. I reached out to them and said, I want to come visit the kids who are separated from their parents. And they said, Senator, please, that would be great, come on in. Later in the day, HHS tried to cancel my visit when they heard I was going there. But I said, this is not a federal facility, this is a nonprofit that has invited me in. I've been there before and I'm going to go see these kids. And so I went out last Friday morning, 8 days ago. I visited with about, well, there's about 150 kids at the facility, 110 from Latin America, about 20 who've been separated from their families in the last 2 months and brought there. I will say, Youth for Tomorrow, if you look at their website, it says we are a temporary home for children in crisis. Our goal is to stabilize the children and then reunite them with their families. That's their mission. But I'm not convinced that's the mission of this administration. And when I asked them, they were doing all they could to help these children and even had helped them find parents and been able to get on the phone with them in detention centers. But when I asked them, will they be reunited with their parents, they couldn't say because they don't know what the HHS policy is. Congress has to stay on the backs of this administration. Any administration that would so cavalierly separate children from families cannot be trusted to reunite children with families, and they will only do it if the American public keeps speaking up and if Congress keeps leaning into this administration. And we will continue to do it until almost all of these children are reunited with their parents. Here's why I say almost all. Many of you know I worked in Honduras as a missionary in 1980 and 81. There's a Honduran family, a father, Marco Antonio Munoz, who was 39 years old, who came with his wife and his 3-year-old son, and they crossed the border in Texas, turned themselves in, asked for asylum and refuge. The border officials told him, you have to now separate from your family. We will not give you refuge as a victim of violence. His brother-in-law had been murdered by a drug gang, and that's why they left their hometown of Copan, Honduras. The border agents grabbed the 3-year-old child from his arms. He fought to hold on to his daughter, just like you're holding on to his son, just like you're holding on to your daughter. He wouldn't let go of his 3-year-old son. And so multiple agents grabbed him and wrested the boy out of his hands. And the father did what a lot of fathers would do. He fought to keep the child. And so they put him in a squad car and he fought. When they took him out of the squad car, he tried to escape to get back to his son. Then they put him in a kennel and he rattled the cage so much that they took him out of the kennel and they put him in a padded cell. When they checked on him the next morning, Marco Antonio Munoz had committed suicide. The border agent who found him, this is what they said, this is a quote, I can't imagine why Mr. Munoz chose to separate himself from his family this way. It was not Mr. Munoz who chose to separate himself from his family. He's fought with every ounce of strength in his body to keep his family together. It was this president and this administration that chose to separate him from his child. Tremendously unjust. There's at least one 3-year-old boy who is not going to be able to reunify with his father because of the cruelty of this administration. And in Congress, we got to stay on them until every child, this little boy will be able to be reunited with his mother, but not his father. But we have to make sure that every child torn from a parent's grasp is reunited with them. And with that, I'm glad to take a few questions.
There's definitely some people who would disagree with you, who would say some parties trying to use that to the point saying that people are the ones to separate children from their families. What would you say to that, to those people?
The president did have to back down because of you. This president doesn't back down much. He had to back down and sign an executive order saying that he wouldn't separate children from families, but let's ask about the questions that remain unanswered. So Well, what about the 2,500 kids? When will you reunite them with families? Where will they be detained? For how long will they be detained? What are the circumstances to determine when their detention will end? The most pressing and urgent is, when will these children be reunited with their families? So you're right, the president with his tail between his legs had to back away from an anti-humanitarian policy because the Americans' moral gag reflex erupted with such force. But I don't think we can now trust this president to do the right thing by these people that he's demonized and named for years.
I don't want my tax dollars being used to bail more detention. That's for sure.
Yep, I hear you. I hear you.
Being as this is put on by next gen the youth, can you talk about the importance of the youth being so passionate?
Yeah, thank you. So the question was about next gen, today's next gen. The reason I'm a few minutes late is we're kicking off a new thing in Virginia called the New Leaders Council, which is designed to encourage millennials, diverse millennials, to participate, engage, and even run for office. And I'm coming from there to here. And so there is a good connection. Next Gen is a very strong organization. They had a wonderful role in Virginia elections last November. They had a particularly strong role in encouraging young people and college students to engage and run for office. And this is an issue that dramatically affects young people, and I'm glad to see that they're so engaged in the issue.
Just another question. There have been some calls to maybe disband ICE or to change the way our immigration laws work. Certainly, the country needs immigration laws, but how do you think it should be operating in the future in regards to people trying to seek asylum and things of that nature?
The right thing to do is to do comprehensive immigration. One of the first things I worked on when I came to the Senate, we passed a bill in June of 2013 with nearly 70 votes, bipartisan. Big, comprehensive, bipartisan immigration reform that was comprehensive. It was protection for dreamers. It was border security. It was helping employers figure out the bona fides of employees. It was a path to citizenship for folks who were undocumented. It was visa reforms. And we passed it bipartisan, but the Republican House never even took the bill up in committee, much less on the floor. Nearly 5 years later, finally the House, you saw this past week, finally the House took up 2 immigration bills on the floor, and they voted both of them down. They don't know what they want to do. We have to do comprehensive immigration reform, and that is the right thing. I drafted a bill with Democrats and Republicans in February to do a comprehensive reform that would involve some border security done right and permanent protection for 1.8 million dreamers, but the president wouldn't do it. This president is more interested in demonizing immigrants than he is in solving the problem. Any other questions? All right.
Senator, this is a little bit unrelated to the topic of today, but what is your response to the Capitol Gazette massacre this past week in Annapolis?
It's so frightening. It's so frightening. I mean, look, and I've been reading in the aftermath of the horrible shooting at the Capitol Gazette, a lot of journalists have been posting. This is the kind of hate I deal with every day, posting things that they hear from readers. And journalists want to do their job, and they want to believe that those kind of hateful postings are just people who are just mouthing off and will never do anything bad. But I mean, this was somebody who gave him a lot of warning that he was going to do something bad and did. And so, and I will say, this president has over and over again encouraged disrespect for the important press tradition that's enshrined in the First Amendment. And I think it's time for all elected officials not to agree with everything the press says. Look, I read articles I like, and I read articles I don't. And some of the ones I don't like are probably accurate, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't challenge the press. I don't fight against them and demean them. The press has a job to do that's been very important since the First Amendment was put in the Constitution. Freedom of the press is in the Constitution for a reason. It's in the First Amendment to the Constitution for a reason, and we need to have leaders who understand it and don't demonize press.
The last question that I have is, there's all these people out here today. There's protests like this all around the country today,
Yes.
thousands and thousands of people. But what do you want these numbers to translate into? It's one thing to have a protest for a day and to be energized, but come November, what do you really want to see? What do you want these numbers to translate?
Well, we're already seeing the protest work. When people protested about the Trump administration trying to take health insurance away from 30 million people, some folks changed their vote and saved the Affordable Care Act in a vote in the Senate last August. That wouldn't have happened without popular participation and protest. And because we were able to save it in the Senate, Virginia was able to vote to expand Medicaid to 400,000 people. There was no expansion of Medicaid if the Affordable Care Act had been repealed. And it was activism of people that saved the ACA. It was activism of people that elected a good General Assembly and convinced them to finally do Medicaid expansion. So activism in reaching out and raising your voice to your elected representatives, especially at the federal level, can change policy, can change elections, can change outcomes, and can ultimately lead to what I said we need to do, which is a comprehensive and humane immigration reform.
Senator Kaine, an immigrant mother in Richmond recently claimed sanctuary at the Unitarian
Right, at
Church.
Unitarian Church, right.
What are your thoughts on religious congregations creating this interfaith network?
It's very much in accord with, commands in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we are doing some casework for the individual. Actually, the church and the individual reached out to Senator Warner, and when we do casework, we have to get permission from somebody to advocate on their behalf. Senator Warner's office started the casework, but now we have weighed in support of efforts to try to see if there's any way to delay or stop the deportation, and we're going to continue to do our casework on that. All right, thanks so much.
Kaine from the New Testament, Salt of the Earth.
Thank you.
Yeah, so help make goodness go viral. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know which of